on to your butts.
Don't move, you're surrounded by armed bastards.
What are we going to do?
Well, I say let's get out there and twat it.
Alright, welcome back to the Cabin Nights podcast. My name's Jake.
I'm James.
And I'm Rob.
And today we are going to be discussing the movie The Lords of Chaos. To those not aware, is a movie about the band Mayhem, the black metal band Mayhem. They started in the late 80s in Norway, and they created what Euronymous calls, he's the lead guitarist, or rather was the lead guitarist.
Spoilers.
True Norwegian black metal. Yeah, we've all very recently watched the movie, so we're going to be discussing the movie, maybe passing on some... as James just said, there will be spoilers, and a very strange noise coming from the cabin, apparently. But anyway, moving on from that. Again, for those that don't know, Mayhem are a Norwegian black metal band, and since the events of the film, the Lords of Chaos, they're actually a rather run-of-the-mill black metal band. There's been no notoriety, no infamy, and nothing really of which to cause any offence. But during those days, in the early 90s, there was a lot, as we are about to discuss.
I'd just like to say something before we start this podcast. When the film got released, we did make a pact that we were all going to watch it together.
During a cabin night, no?
During a cabin night, actually, yeah. And to be fair, we did hold on that pact for a long time. Until Jake broke that pact, shortly followed by me, and then James, all within 3 days.
I would argue I didn't break it, because you two had already broken it. There was nothing for me to break.
Well, I didn't break
The
it.
pact was broken.
No,
I'll take that one.
It was fractured by that point.
I smashed it.
I say, in my defence, that getting my wife involved in metal has been something of a hit and miss subject over the years, over the 12 years we've been together. So, when I found that film on All 4, and she said, yeah, I could watch that, I was like, I'm not wasting any time, just going on. So, yeah.
See, now, I said to my wife, I said, are you bothered by watching it? She went, oh, yeah, I haven't seen trains. That looks quite interesting. I was like, oh, really? I watched up to it. We'll get to talking points of what is actually in the film. But it got to the first, let's say, rather graphic moment. I just paused it, went in and went, yeah, it's not for you, this film. Definitely. She went, no. I went, no. Even if you weren't pregnant, no, this is not for you, this film.
No.
I waited until my wife had gone to bed, because she would have watched it, but I wanted to actually watch it. So I waited till she'd gone to bed, and then I watched it.
Okay, so I suppose the best way to open this is to ask you both in turn. Give me a brief sort of summary of what you thought of the film. I'm going to start with Rob because
Okay.
Because I'm interested.
Because he sat there,
Because I'm interested in what James is going to say,
Yeah,
really.
okay.
So.
Yeah. Well, you better start with him.
I kind of already know what you're going to say.
Fair enough. So I really enjoyed the film. I didn't necessarily agree with entirely with the horror aspects of it. Because on IMDb and Wikipedia and everywhere, it's labelled as a drama and a horror. There are horror elements to it and quite graphic scenes. Not necessarily. I mean, some of them. Well, one of them in particular is way worse than a lot of horror films I've seen. I really enjoyed it. There was not much that I didn't know. Other than a small point I said to Jake the other day, I didn't realise that Varg Vikernes was actually a member of the band.
Yeah.
I believed he played bass on the album, but
The racist bassist.
yes, I didn't know he was actually in the band.
Actual cannibal Shia LaBeouf. Racist, bassist Varg. Varg, if you're listening, please don't kill us.
please don't.
What am I talking about? He's not listening to podcasts.
Well, he's banned off YouTube, isn't he? So we're all right. I felt like there were bits missing out of it. As I mentioned to Jake briefly the other day, it seems to take a really drastic turn over nothing, essentially. When I know there was a little bit more, because I read up after watching the film, I know there was a little bit more to like the final scene than what causes it as such. I don't want to say too much because I'm also interested in what James thought of the film.
I feel like my opinion's been really bigged up, and I think it's been really lackluster.
Go on, James, tell us. What did you think?
I thought it was a good film. I did think it was. Now, my knowledge of that era of history, especially metal history, is basically what everybody knows. So yes, I know Norwegian churches were getting burnt down, and horrible things were happening. I didn't know about the stabbing of the gay guy in Lilliput, was it?
Lilyhammer.
Lilyhammer, not Lilliput. Lilliput's in America somewhere. I don't know. Cole. I don't know. Her. No. So I didn't know about that at all. That was I didn't know that, and especially didn't know it was just another member of the band. You know, I didn't know anything. The way in my head all that was built up, basically it was Varg who did everything. Everything was done by Varg, not by anyone else. Varg was basically the ringleader in all this. Yeah. So me going in, I was like, well, I know the stereotypical things that everybody knows about Norwegian black metal, and that's it. And obviously, this story is kind of infamous in that circle. So I knew it happened. Mm-hmm. I didn't realise just how well, apart from hearing Varg himself talk about it on a couple of occasions, I didn't realise how graphic it was. Like Rob was saying with the whole horror elements, it was brutal. Some of those scenes were brutal. I mean, I remember. This is going to be spoilers all throughout this podcast. I might as well start out. The end with between Varg and Euronymous. Mm-hmm. The actual main body of it, for lack of a better term, was pretty horrific. And then obviously the last blow. I remember Audrey sat in that seat watching this, going, ugh. It was real. Again, like we're saying with horror films, in the previous episode, we were saying, how it gets those visceral reactions. Yeah. And I was watching the film the entire thing, going, yeah, it's fine, enjoying it, fine. And then that was the only time I went, ugh. It was it was a horrific moment. And I've not done a lot of research since, simply because I've just not had time. But so I'd be interested to know how true that is, because I know it was a brutal moment. It was a brutal murder. But I thought, as a film, it was quite well done. I was surprised to learn that they did the entire film in 18 days. It was a very short, technically it was a very short production window. Although ironically, the guy who directed it had been working up to making this film for over 10 years. Because he was part of, I can't remember his name, but he was part of the Norwegian black metal scene, at least in a peripheral.
Ackland.
At least in a peripheral way, he was part of the black metal scene. So he'd been obviously wanted to tell the story and make this film for a while. And then I don't know about you, but I was a director. I went, this film I'm working towards my entire life, done in just over 2 weeks. You kind of go, oh,
is that it?
I'm done now. Oh, all right then. Okay. So I thought it was a really interesting film.
Okay, well, it's as good a place to start as any. The end of the film. Let's talk about that scene, seeing as you've mentioned it and you've mentioned it. The scene at the end of the film where Varg, who was the bassist of Mayhem, stabs the lead guitarist and essentially band leader, Euronymous.
He wasn't, because he just signed a contract that said he was leaving.
Yeah. That's what I say, one-time member of the band. Okay. Listen, Rob, come on, keep up.
Sorry.
Take this seriously, for fuck's sake.
So Euronymous, the two had a falling out of ideals, shall we say, although Varg is certainly painted in that film as having absolutely none, because he wants to kill gay people and burn churches down. He accuses Euronymous of being something of a poser and not at all interested in taking it to the next level.
To being true.
The true black metal, yes. Because of this falling out and a rather ill-advised interview on Varg's part with a local journalist, the two have a falling out. And Euronymous sends a contract to Varg to say, we're going to relinquish everything that we took money-wise from yourself. You'll be repaid everything that you put into your own Burzum albums, and we'll go our separate ways. Unfortunately, Euronymous had made a comment to several other people who were part of the scene at the time that it was really.
Watch the film, because it's only one. That's where my argument is.
This is where there's a dispute between the film and in real life. So the film says that Euronymous heard about this interview and was really disappointed in Varg and said, in anger, I'm going to stab him, I'm going to film it as a snuff movie. Now, in real life, or certainly as far as Varg is concerned, he claims that anybody who would give Euronymous the time of the day heard this story and how he was going to kill him. So basically he told a lot of people, apparently, according to Varg.
Okay.
Anyway, under the guise of returning said contract to Euronymous, Varg drove to Oslo from Bergen to present him with the contract and also to brutally stab him to death, as is shown in the film. So the scene in particular where Varg kills Euronymous, stabs him to death, it's one of those things for me where the thing that was dreadfully apparent whilst watching the scene is that I, from sort of getting into Mayhem and listening to them as a band, I was aware of how Euronymous died. I knew that it was stabbed 37 times or whatever it were, 27 times, and finally stabbed in the head. I'd read that. I knew that was a thing. But seeing it sort of dramatised in that way, and that they didn't sort of edit any of it. I mean, we've spoken previously about the Psycho shower scene. You know, you never saw Blade enter flesh. You know, it was all done very
It's like with
artfully.
Halloween, you don't see it.
Yeah.
You hear something and you get
So
that
you know
look.
it's happened. So we've even been spoon fed that, I suppose,
Yeah.
in previous scenes. So to see it happening as starkly as you did and as graphically as you did, it was an incredibly difficult scene to watch. I also felt somewhat sorry for Euronymous because he was certainly in the film painted to be sort of, you know, a kid who got in maybe a bit above his head. It broke ties with Varg, and he wanted to get out and just do his music and that sort of thing. So the fact that he died the way he did, it kind of made the film at least more tragic for me.
The impression I got at the end, and again, I don't know how true this is to life, but the impression they were giving at the end when he's changing his appearance, he gets his hair cut, was that he was. The impression that he tries to give in the film is that he's trying to leave the black metal scene. I know there's a bit when he's writing obviously what is going to be the press release of the new Mayhem album, saying Mayhem is back, Evil is back, but the impression he's given seems to be that he's trying to escape that world. So you're right, it does make it more tragic because it's obviously Varg that then, or Count, whatever he's called himself at the time.
Grishnak.
He's obviously.
Excuse me? Just call me the Count.
I was surprised to find out that actually, well, maybe not that exchange, but that interview did happen. I thought, no one's that stupid. And I did read up and went, oh, for God's sake, he actually did that. What an idiot.
Sorry, Varg.
Sorry, Varg. I would say we love you, but I think we might get killed for that as well. It paints in a much more tragic light in the sense that he was obviously trying to escape, and then it's Varg who then... It's this almost this demon that he has created, really. Because again, the entire film tries to paint Varg, and I think it's the interpretation I've seen a lot of people have of the film is that Varg was just this power-hungry maniac almost, who just who manipulated everyone around him. And how true to life that is, I'm not sure, but obviously it paints him almost as very, very easily influenced. He's almost very naive in that respect. Because obviously when you first see him in the film, he looks more like your typical... He was more like us, to be fair. You know, he's got his battle jacket with scorpions on. Not any of us like scorpions, but
Poser metal.
Yeah. So, a lot of his lines in the film are echoes of what Euronymous has said. You know, almost word for word in places. It's what Euronymous said in an earlier scene. Sometimes when Varg wasn't even there, he said this, and then Varg is repeating this later on. So he's trying to pick that almost Varg is the more darker shadow of Euronymous.
There's something I took from the film is that it's told very much from the point of view of Euronymous.
Oh yeah,
I think it's
definitely he's a narrator for one.
Well, yeah, but I think I'm talking about from a production point of view is that whoever's Jonas Ackerlund who directed it, he's took Euronymous' side in this.
Yeah, I get that.
I think
Yeah.
There's a lot in the book, loads of chaos, and okay, whether you take what Varg says as gospel or whether you take it with
Don't say gospel, you might burn it.
a very large pinch of salt. But certainly some of the things that he was saying is that Euronymous was not the character that he is in the film in the sense that he himself was very manipulative, very controlling, and generally not a nice person to be around. And if you weren't part of his inner circle that sat in that basement underneath his record store, you weren't shit, basically.
But you do get that a little bit at the point where he signs Varg to contract in Mayhem.
Yeah.
He realises what Varg is doing, and it says something, I can't remember exactly word for word, but it says something like, I had to stop it, I had to do something to stop it. And straight away, the next scene is offering Varg a contract to say, you can be a member of my band, you be with us. So he's trying to stop it, but
sort of channel it in the right way.
Yeah.
By putting it into Mayhem, does he think he can control?
I don't think. This is just my own opinion, but from reading what I've read about it, I don't get the sense that Euronymous did that in order to better channel whatever aggressions or behaviours Varg were displaying. I think, to me, he was a controlling person, and he was interested to see how far he could push people. And that is evidenced in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When Pele, stage name Dead, who is dead, spoiler alert, it clearly was a chap who suffered horrendous mental health issues, is laid on a bed just staring at the ceiling for hours on end, and Euronymous, this is in the film, Euronymous offers him a shotgun and says, if you're so depressed all the time, why don't you just end it all? And there's other accounts from, such as Necro Butcher and other members who were involved in the scene at the time, who said things like he would quite regularly goad Dead and say things to him and threaten him.
Yeah,
and
it's
say,
quite foreshadowing, weren't it? Why don't you do it? And then it turns out.
I don't think ultimately that was the cause of him killing himself. I think because of the issues that he had, it was always going to happen. But
it raises the question for Euronymous. Did he actually believe that? Was it an act? Was it, was it just a stage persona? Because I don't know what Euronymous' real name. What is Euronymous' real name?
Austin Asta or something.
So at these, so did Austin Arthur, him,
Euronymous,
Jeff.
Euronymous.
We'll call him Jeff. We'll call him Jeff. So where was he being Austin, him, or was he being Euronymous? Were they the same person? And I think the film tries to do that, but not a lot. You only get hints of it, like when you see when his family and there's the pictures at the end. Obviously, he's got the long black hair, but then wearing a nice skiing jumper. So it's sort of like, are these two in the same person? Like Varg and whatever, that is who he is. That Christian. Varg and Christian is the same. But if anything, Varg becomes Christian because obviously Christian dies. He doesn't believe anything. He doesn't more. But for Euronymous, I get the impression they were trying to go with they're two different people, and he was saying all these things as a way to get a reaction, because that's what true Norwegian black metal is.
And it's what I said to you the other day, isn't it? I said that in the end, they all became what they hated the most, and that's posers. They were all... There
was only Varg that was true, and everybody else was
and I think that goes, if anything, that proves that maybe being true Norwegian black metal, as they say, is not a good thing at all, if that's what it is. Yeah, just going back to what you were saying, James, about it sort of blurred the lines a little bit between, was he doing this because it looked so, black fingernails, or was it, what I said to you is I think he started out with Euronymous. He started out with a clear vision of what he thought black metal should be. It were a new scene at the time. It were something that they were pioneers of. They were the first band to do it to the extreme levels. I mean, you look at the first wave of black metal, it doesn't sound particularly like...
Yeah, it's far removed from what that was.
So what would you count as just a slight what would you count as the first?
We were talking about it, so we actually looked
at it. Yeah, so you've got such as...
King Diamond, Merciful
Fate.
Because that's interesting.
Misfits, a classic, which shocked us. Well, certainly shocked me.
But I say, because...
Alice Cooper.
So the original black metal was... Again, it's a genre of metal I know very little and have relatively very little interest in. So would you argue that original black metal is more an image rather than a sound? Until bands like Mayhem and Birds
it's very much about the song lyrics, isn't it?
Everybody attributes Venom being the first.
Because their second album was called Black Metal.
And then, one was they had black metal at war with Satan. Yeah, they were all based in that.
It was very much that the first wave of black metal was very much about the image they were portraying, not necessarily about the sound. Because for all intents and purposes, they were a bunch of new wave of British heavy metal, a new wave of heavy metal type bands.
Wasn't really any difference between them and Lars Ulrich in that sense, because he went and listened to all his new wave original, and then he ended up joining other people, and that's what Euronymous did.
The second wave, of which, as I've said, Mayhem were the pioneers, it was the first time the music was taken to an extreme level, blast beats, I suppose, really sort of distorted, poorly produced albums.
But I said, for an outsider, it's almost impenetrable.
Yeah,
black metal. It's you can't. There's not really an entry point.
Yeah, I can't imagine just Joe Blogs off the street going, I want to listen to a metal band. The Mayhem will do.
Well, that's why again, because I looked at more the trivia of the film, is that's why there's not a lot of black metal actually in the film. It's more. I mean, I'm sure you hear Dio at one point. You hear
there's so many bands.
You hear a lot of. In fact, you hear Accept. Because I heard
Fast as a Shark.
Fast as a Shark. I was trying to what song that went into. So they're all singing that.
That's at the party. Isn't it?
Yeah. So it's a very, almost very light-hearted type for metal. It's very light-hearted music.
Yeah.
But it's stuff that's easily accessible. But I don't know if they were trying to, because he was saying that it's very hard. People who don't know that scene, it's very hard for them to listen to. I agree completely.
just to mention, to cover what you've said there about these people listening to this sort of music. So Mayhem listening to Accept, and you see a couple of Motorhead posters in the film.
That might a gig, I think, at one point.
Yeah,
Aren't they? Yeah,
they are at the Rockefeller in Oslo, which is where I went a couple of years ago to see Stray Cats. Fun fact.
Moving on.
Yeah, so these true Norwegian black metalers grew up listening to the same metal that a lot of people grew up listening to, and there is a moment, and it's very distorted and it's very covered by sort of creepy aura that surrounds the band. But there's a riff in Funeral Fog, which if you listen to it closely, speed it up actually.
Oh, you can't slow it down much.
Change the key slightly. It sounds exactly like a riff out of Ace of Spades. Interesting.
If you speed it up, change the key, put this bit over here, put a symbol in this bit, it sounds exactly...
Let me on the microphone.
Let me on the microphone. It'll sound exactly
Basically
like
make it Motorhead.
It's a very similar riff, so you can see where the inspiration is the point again. But yeah, moving back to what I was saying about Euronymous and how he was essentially the godfather of this scene. He was tasked with creating what that scene would look like to the world, and he was very clear in the early days. He was very clear. It's like, if you don't like this music, you can whatever. If we want to stab people at our gigs and all that, that sort of thing. He was very vocal about it. I think as the film progresses, it's clear to see that he is doing it for effect. He's doing it because it's part of the scene. He's not doing it because it's an honest held belief. And whatever person he may have become during the course of the events of that time, I don't think he truly believed that that gay people had to die and they were wrong, and that Satan.
I mean, they don't actually mention that too much in the film. I do.
Yeah, I think it's something else that we should probably cover in this. But that particular scene where Faust, who's the drummer of Emperor, lures a homosexual man from a bar into a park and stabs him to death. Again, another wonderfully graphic scene from the film.
I found that, apart from, obviously the very end of Euronymous' death scene, apart from that moment, I found that death more graphic.
It was harder to watch.
I felt like you felt every single stab wound.
I agree.
It was very, because it was a lot of times it was that wide, lingering shot every time you went. It looked like they were very. I don't know how it's made, but it looked like there were very few digital effects. It looked like they were trying to make that as practical as possible.
Not that I've been around any stabbings at all, but when you hear, if you watch Scream or you watch Halloween and you hear that fake input stab sound,
it's very Hollywood. It's very Hollywood.
Yeah, whereas that was more.
It's very wet.
It was much more of a.
They tried to make it feel as real as possible.
Which to me it wasn't. I also said to Jake when we were briefly discussing it, because we knew we were going to do this and we didn't want to say too much. I got a almost different effect from what was portrayed in that scene. I almost got that part of it was an act, but then part of it was confusion in himself.
Yeah.
Because he lures him away from the bar that they're in, and he follows him. Now, and then there's a bit of a scene where he touches him. He touches him, and I was a bit like, well, was he confused at that point? Was he wanting to experiment, and then all of a sudden realizes, no, that's not
true.
Norwegian black metal. That's not what I should be doing. So, have some of this. You're gonna get stabbed. But we had a bit of a
I suspected that it was a rather well put together act of luring him away.
Because I didn't get the impression he was luring him away. The impression I got from that scene was that he was just in the bar and he was confused, and this guy just ended up following him because he got the wrong impression.
Yeah.
And this opportunity presented itself to Faust, basically, and he didn't know what he wanted, and almost he panicked. And then obviously the conversation he had with Euronymous about stabbing someone earlier in the film just resurfaced, and just his emotions, very confused they were, took over. That was the impression I got.
So we did get pretty much
similar.
Similar.
So it wasn't anything to do with the fact that this guy was gay had nothing to do with it. He was just unfortunately in the wrong place.
Which is where I like your point.
Disagree in the sense that I think the fact that he was gay did have something to do with it.
Okay.
I don't think he stabbed him because he was gay, or rather he did, but not because he hated gay people. In that scene at that time, he killed a gay man because that would have had a far bigger effect to his bandmates and to his friends. No, I got the impression that it was like a trophy killing.
Yeah.
I'm going to kill
Yeah.
a gay guy because that's what we do on the black metal scene, rather than I hate gays, or rather I'm a closeted gay and I'm scared of my own feelings. I'm going to stab him, which I think essentially covers your
Yeah.
doesn't it? Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting to see very, very different.
Yeah.
Then to counteract that, Faust was actually one of the first people who sent a message of support to
Gal.
Thank you, I forgot his name.
Lead singer of Gorgoroth.
Yes, he was one of the first people who sent a message of support for him. Because Faust has come out since and gone, well, I'm not homophobic, I'm not, you know. From what I remember, I may be misquoting this or misreading it, but Faust was basically saying, or has said, that he was just in the wrong place. This other person was in the wrong place at the wrong time, basically.
It could have been anybody. It just happened to be
gay.
It was
gay.
the hatred, and I mean, it sounds to a degree like we're trying to justify what he did. Let's just say, for the record, it was an
Do not
absolutely
agree.
deplorable, disgusting thing that he did.
I mean, I just side note, I didn't realise how much flack Emperor got years later when Faust went to prison for this and was released. And obviously he performed again with Emperor, I think about 2014.
11 to 14, yeah.
But they got
When I saw them at Bloodstock.
Oh really? I mean, again, it's a bit
Who were doing the first album?
Nightside Eclipse.
Nightside Eclipse.
because obviously he didn't escape. You know, it's a bit of a crap place to hide in the middle of a band. Good. But it's only if he served, like Varg actually. Varg has served his time and has been released. So do you think they still need to pay for their crimes to this day, or have they? Because they've obviously both moved on. I know it's hard for the families of the people they killed.
I feel like it's an episode of this podcast on its own, but separating the art from the artist.
Yeah, that will be an episode all its own.
I think the one impression I did get of Christian Varg, Count whatever he is, whoever he is
this week,
whatever name is,
County Monte Visto.
Knowing the end of the film before watching it, and knowing some of the things he's been banned for YouTube saying, and knowing the fact that he did believe in the Nazi regime, I believe, as he was,
and still does. Certainly nationalism exists in Norway.
I got the impression that it was quite tame until the end. I didn't really get how sick this individual could have been. When he was Christian, he just seemed like a really timid kind of
quiet metal guy.
Yeah, just I like metal, but I don't want to upset anybody. Yeah. And then he's gone from that to that. But I didn't get when he would burn in churches. It didn't come across to me that I'm doing this and I love it. It was just like, yeah, let's do it and it's fun and
what we do.
Yeah.
But I suppose it raises the question again. It's not necessarily just for Lords of Mayhem, Lords of Chaos. It's not just for that, but it's like, was this who Varg was always going to be, or did he become this because he wanted to be part of that scene?
Yeah.
Well,
it was clear that he did want to become part of that scene because he ditched the Scorpions thing, didn't he? He became, I've got to be a bit cooler.
But the church burning and stuff was kind of, oh, this is extreme, this will get them over, or did it, this will get me over with them, or was it more kind of, oh, I can finally do this, I can release this image of
Yeah,
this
there's two sort of ways of looking at it, and the first one is, was he always that person? And it's just that, seeing him being a quiet person, or rather calculating and quite cool about the whole thing. Was he just being that person, but in the wrong setting?
Yeah.
When he sat in the fast food place at the start, he sat eating a burger. How evil is that?
Yeah.
But then you apply that very same character, the very same way of acting, the cool, calculating way that he is, to burning a church down.
Yeah.
It feels like maybe there's no character development. You've got quiet metal guy, racist church burning stabber guy. It doesn't appear to be a lot of character development, but then maybe he always was that person at the start.
I mean, that's something I found very unbelievable in the film. You only ever saw Euronymous. You seem to only ever see him eating kebab, like a proper Johnny kebab, and he was stick thin. There was nothing to him. I eat one kebab and I put on 4 stone, and he wasn't. He had every time he had a doner meat sticking out of his mouth.
It's because it's true Norwegian
black metal
to eat a kebab.
Some of the points that I really did like from the film were the true to life shots. So the scene when they're laid in what looks like a bus stop, almost that wooden bus stop, and then one of us laid down, and they've scribbled Mayhem on the wall. Even the writing of how that was written on the wall looks exactly like the shot. And when Burzum was written over the Mayhem,
a lot of attention to detail.
Did that actually happen then? That Burzum over Mayhem?
Yeah.
I just thought there was something they did for the film. I didn't
like
realise
gang warfare towards it.
Was it?
Yeah.
was
I didn't
which
realise
is why I said that the killing of Euronymous almost seems unjustified, because he said it to one person and then next minute he's dead, kind of thing. And
it kind of came out. It kind of came out of nowhere.
in the film it does, but obviously I knew there were a bit more to it. I didn't quite realise how far it had gone and whether that is a true story in Varg's eyes, if he were telling anybody who would listen to him. But also at the point of the Burzum thing happening, he was still a member of Mayhem.
So he hadn't actually left Mayhem at this
No,
point.
because they were kind of fundraising out of Helvet.
Helvet.
Yeah, whatever his record shop was.
Foster Records, or
Yeah.
whatever it was called. Yeah. The basement underneath.
Yeah.
The label was called
Yeah.
Death Like Silence, wasn't
Yeah.
it? But
Yeah,
the shop at which they operated out of was called Helvet.
Yeah.
It's something Norwegian.
And there's
It
the very
means hell.
Spinal Tap bit in it. I didn't want a Black Album.
That was fantastic.
Yeah,
That- when he
I know. I
opens
did
it.
giggle.
I'm wondering if that was. I don't recall hearing it, but I'm wondering if the whole Black Album thing was a well-known story about Mayhem, which Spinal Tap took.
Yeah.
It seems like the
No,
reference.
because Spinal Tap predates Mayhem. Can't do.
Oh yeah, of course it does. Yeah, yeah, when is? Yeah.
But
Okay.
Spinal Tap is 80s. Write in on a postcard and let us know when Spinal Tap is. We can't be asked. Look at IMDb. But I'm pretty. Spinal Tap predates Mayhem, and also it's a different thing.
I do remember reading that the Spinal Tap bit where they're looking at the Black Album is a reference to another band.
Okay.
So
I know
maybe
Metallica referenced it in their
Black Album.
Yeah. That's what I always got from
Yeah.
the Metallica.
In
Well,
the Grammy.
That's the same year, isn't it?
Grammy acceptance
What,
speech.
what was Black Album? Was
91.
91, which is when all this was happening.
Oh,
Dead
yeah.
killed himself in 91.
Yeah.
So
So it could be,
potential.
slightly
Yeah.
predate.
This
Yeah,
is something I said to Rob the other day. I said it feels to me like this whole thing. It's sad because of the horrific things that happen, and it's tragic that these kids feel like that they have to burn churches and stab people to be true, sort of anything. But it did feel like in some of the funnier moments, like right at the start of the film when the drummer's drumming,
Yeah, and
his drumstick sticking, it feels very Spinal Tap in places. And the thing I said to Becky, my
Yeah,
wife,
yeah.
is it feels like Spinal Tap, but in real life a lot of the time.
Yeah, there's a very sudden tone shift at about 20 minutes. Yeah, the first bit's almost quite like I said, the drummer, he's drumming along, puts his sticks up and he gets stuck in the styrofoam ceiling. And then and then the drummer disappeared. There's almost as the drummer disappears.
Yeah, he literally does disappear. It was almost like the cartoon. There were drumsticks there and they drop. And
Yeah, so it's kind of like, oh, okay. So is that to lure people in with a false sense of security? And to double bill, this is Spinal Tap and Lords of Chaos.
Yeah.
People go, oh, we're going to enjoy this, and then suddenly just get obliterated. And go, oh my god! It was a very sudden tonal shift, I thought, in that film. But again, I knew roughly what to expect. So
Yeah. There's one last thing really that I think we've talked about all the other individual parts of the film sort of in relative detail. The one big thing that we've not really discussed is the suicide at the start of the film, or relatively close to the start.
Yeah.
Again, a little background for those not aware. The band actually started mid to late 80s and had a streamer session vocalists covering live recordings and album recordings. But for the big evil release, as it were, they brought in a chap from Sweden called Pelle something, whose stage name was Dead.
he's never last name because Pele's from Brazil, and I don't think Pele.
Pelle.
Oh, Pele, not
Not
Pele.
Pele.
Oh, but I
Pele.
think it'd be a very different band if.
Looks more like Pell, I think.
Yeah, let's call him Dead because
That was what he called himself. Yeah.
Now he was a very disturbed individual. It helped with the image that Euronymous was trying to put across in the scene at the time, in that this guy was burying his clothes before a gig so that they smelt like dirt when they performed anywhere. He was doing things like putting dead crows in a bag and sniffing it to get that stench of death in his nose, and and this is all the sort of thing that Dead did because he wanted to. This was no influence from Euronymous.
Yeah, this was not part of being true. This was
If
just
anything,
what he did.
it makes it look like Dead influenced Euronymous rather than Euronymous influenced Dead.
Very much so. But yeah, so they performed for a number of years, and then in '91, I believe, obviously, Dead succumbed to his whatever mental health issues he was having in the depression and what have you, and took his own life, which he did in. I don't mean to aggrandise it in any way, but it was pretty spectacular the way that he did it. Slit both wrists, cut his throat, but then because he was in the middle of a Norwegian forest, he couldn't bleed to death, so he blew his brains out with a shotgun.
What do you mean you couldn't bleed to death?
Because it was that
So
cold.
cold.
Oh, I thought you meant, this is the wrong location for this. I'm going to have to go. It's not very cinematic, this is it.
But if you look at the difference, though, from the scene where Euronymous gets stabbed in the head to the scene where Dead cuts his wrist and his neck, in fact, there is more blood splurt from the Euronymous scene because he's in a warmer, in a better environment.
I noticed that.
Not a better environment, but he's in a apartment block, isn't it?
I hadn't even noticed that.
In the suicide note that Dead left, he says, "I tried to cut my wrist, but the blood was coagulating before it came out."
Yeah, because they cut that suicide note down
Yeah,
a
the
great
suicide.
deal in the film.
I say, you only saw a little bit of the
It's
suicide
about-
note.
the
it's about
famous
an
line,
A4
"Sorry
pages.
about all the blood."
Yeah. It's about an A4 page full, but yet they've just put,
Sorry about all the blood.
Sorry about the blood, yeah.
So that's again, it's another rather horrific scene. Not in the least because of what Euronymous does afterwards, which is
that's all true, isn't it? Yeah.
infamous infamous
cover, EP
law
cover.
surrounding the band. Yeah, a live album, I believe. Dawn of the Black Hearts is the image that Euronymous snapped of Dead, laid on the floor dead.
Do you pick up on the bit where he says it's chicken bone?
Yeah,
Yeah,
wondering
is
if-
that
I
true?
I got the feeling. See, Faust apparently still has his, and
For those who don't know, the story is that he picked pieces of dead skull and put it into necklaces for band members.
which he gave to people that he deemed,
In his inner circle as such.
he deemed worthy of being part of the black metal scene. And
Yeah.
people that he respected, essentially.
But there is like a throwaway line when he says, when he gives it to Varg, in fact.
Yeah.
It's a chicken bone.
No, it's when Varg tries to give it back after
Yeah,
Varg's
that's
released
just
from
chicken.
prison.
Chicken bone, you can keep that. And the feeling I got from that particular line is it was the director trying to leave that in your hands.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Did he do these? Because taking a picture of your dead friend, digging through his brains and getting shards of bone out, turning that into jewellery, essentially, that's much more in keeping with what Varg does. That's the sort of thing Varg would do. So I'm wondering, because the film tried to portray Euronymous maybe as more of a, let's do it in theory but not in practice, whether it's leaving it up to you. I believe.
Whether he's
it's one of those. Faust claims
picked to the skull, but actually he's got some.
Well, the impression I got was that it was just Euronymous trying to say stuff to bring Varg down, going, we don't actually... I mean, whether it was or was not.
Yeah.
The impression I got is that it was part of his skull, but Euronymous was saying it to basically try and bring Varg down a couple of levels, going, look, no, we don't really believe this, even though it is what I say it is.
Yeah.
He was doing it almost to try and diffuse the situation slightly. That was the impression I got.
I also liked the scene at the end as well, because it looks, when that scene happens, when Dead shoots himself in the head, you see Euronymous and he looks... And he goes away and he gets his camera and then he goes and gets it developed and all that sort of stuff. But later on in the film, you see him actually crying over the fact that Dead.
And that's what I'm getting at. I think the film maybe tries to sort of add a human element to Euronymous' actions, and I'm not sure whether that existed, whether there was just that sort of fascination with death, such as it was in that community, and he genuinely. I mean, there's members who. Members of the community at the time who received these supposed skull bones that claim to this day that they are Dead's skull bones. That Faust, for example, the drummer of Emperor, still has his, apparently. So the sense I got is that it was one of those, we'll leave it up to you sort of thing. You might have done it because we've shown you him doing it, but then also at the same time, did he? Because we want to make him a bit more human, sort of thing.
Yeah, that was impressive. I mean, here's an interesting fact for you. Do you know when you see them all record? It's the only time you see Varg playing with Mayhem when they're in the recording studio. The vocalist they've got is actually Attila's son. Attila, not Attila the Hun. Attila, is he still the current vocalist?
He's the current vocalist, Hungarian bloke who's got a really rather impressive range.
Bloody hell, yeah, he did.
It's like Mongolian throat singing. Some of the stuff he does, it's that deep. But then he's got I'm probably going to get shot down for saying this, but a high C, does that sound high to you? I'm not a singer, I don't know.
None of us are singers, that's the problem.
There was a video on YouTube I was watching recently with Becky there that covered Attila's vocal range, and it told you which note he was doing in each, with all the bands he's been doing and what have you. And Becky got her perfect piano note app up, and as Attila was singing, she was going, "Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you can hit that note."
Sorry, you say perfect piano app?
Yes,
that's an actual
that's
thing.
The thing, yeah.
It's so everything, isn't it?
It's so you can obviously get the right
your
tone
pitch
as you're preparing to sing.
As a man who hasn't been able to sing for, I don't know, 17 years now since my balls dropped, I don't really know about this anymore.
Yeah, I think we've probably covered the bigger plot points of the film, and
No, it's not really a question, but it's just more that I was watching the entire film, and I thought all the actors were really good. A bit weird that again, we're in Norway with these really thick American accents, but other than
I
that,
said this to James the other day. That's to Jake the other
That's
day.
Jake.
Yeah.
one without the hair's Jake.
One without the hair's.
did you notice the sneaky Skarsgård?
Is a sneaky Skarsgård?
Yeah, the chap who plays
Walter Skarsgård.
Walter Skarsgård who plays him. Yeah, this guy is I think he's the driver. He plays his driver.
Oh, that's another thing I want
Varg's
to say in a second as well. Yeah.
He plays Varg's driver, and he appeared in when I first or second scene he was in, and I was like, he looks like Pennywise. He looks like Pennywise. I was like, he's got to be a Skarsgård.
Is that the kid who plays Pennywise?
He's not the kid who plays.
Oh, right, I better
It's his
say.
brother. It's his brother, but he is a Skarsgård.
See, now, I thought he didn't. I didn't know he was a Skarsgård. I was looking at him, and Rob might get this more than you, saying it's more a wrestling thing. But it was just me, or did it look like Bo Dallas if he really let himself go?
Yes, yeah. I get that.
He just he had the same kind of, no offense, Bo, same kind of derpy look on his face that Bo has. But no, the point I was going to make was I was watching all the actors are really, really good, but the guy playing Euronymous, I was watching going, that's the kid from Home Alone. And obviously it's not Macaulay Culkin, it's Fuller. I wet the bed. So is that what happens? You wet the bed, then you become the leader of Norwegian black metal. Is that how it goes?
Film aficionado, I know him as the kid from Signs.
Yes, he is.
Is he?
Yeah, the kid who sees an alien and has an asthma attack.
Did
Stabs a dog as well.
when the scene with Euronymous cutting his hair, did that happen? Was that?
I'm not aware of that, to be quite honest.
It's what I mean. It's
Like you said about it, almost stepping away from
Coming
the
out
scene,
of the
but they
Black
were
Metal
just about to release what would have been their biggest, most
still is.
evilest debut album. It would have been. It is then.
It's the debut. Yeah.
No, well,
They've done EPs and stuff, and
Yeah.
It's the first full length out.
yeah,
Full
it's
length.
full length. Yeah.
so it seemed that bit struck
play.
me as a really odd thing. You've tried to put this image out there, and as soon as that image is about to be put on the main massive stage, you're going to completely change how you look.
I think that goes back to what I was saying about him sort of stepping away from the music as a person and separating himself from the scene. I think he, certainly as far as the film's concerned, he was sick of being the person that, this is, being the voice of black metal, essentially being the person who says this is what is or is not metal. And I think he was sort of separating himself from that, and he was separating himself as a person because he got his girlfriend, and
Who was made up for the film? I read that character didn't exist.
So it's chances are he didn't have his hair cut before.
At least not by her. No, whether she was a composite character of a lot of different other people, but that character didn't actually exist. She was not.
Yeah.
She wasn't really there.
Yeah, because it's really strange because she is in it quite a lot. Yeah, then again, that goes back to making the film, making Euronymous more human.
I think that's probably why she was put in, to give him, to almost ground him, because obviously his family doesn't really appear in the film after the first scene. So it's more to ground him, I feel.
I disagree with that element of the film. I think that element of the film I don't agree with, because there's still a lot of people who are still alive still talk about what a shitty person you were, really, how manipulative you were and controlling and all the rest of it. I mean, you've got to ask yourself the question, if he was at that point stepping away from that scene and just being sort of like approaching it from, say, more of a business point of view, why was Necro Butcher on his way to kill him as well?
I've never understood that, why Necro Butcher's suddenly gone.
Which did completely...
Yeah, there's no...
Did skim over.
I think
Necro Butcher's not really in the... He's kind of there.
he
He's
gets
not
fired and then he goes.
Yeah, but he kind of pops up every now and again, doesn't he, in the film?
Mustache.
Yeah, because he rejoined the band, didn't he, later in life?
Pretty
shortly after.
Pretty much once Euronymous was dead, he'd be like, you know what? Well, they lost a bassist because he went to prison for the murder of Euronymous.
Yes, hello, I'll come back. Yeah, they didn't really touch on... Yeah, the character Necro Butcher isn't really in the film, but I never really understood
why he was on his way. I think it's probably because of the way, the manner in which he was fired from the band, and just the whole, you're only a
he'd
bassist,
leave
you're
if you-
replaceable.
If you watch the film, he leaves. He doesn't get fired.
He leaves after an argument with Euronymous.
And you're-
Because he gives him the skull, though, and he goes, I don't fucking want that. I'm not having that.
Yeah,
And that seems to make it like he's leaving rather than being fired as such. But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, he still leaves and he's still gone from the band.
Yeah, I suspect that he probably would have felt like he had no choice but to leave, and that was Euronymous' fault, which I can only assume is the reason for him wanting to stab him. But that then is several years later. So
Yeah, I know. It's a bit
It
of
doesn't
an
seem
odd
to span a very long period either.
No, again, the film, again, the impression I got of the film, and I may have missed a few little bits, was that it seemed to give the impression that this time frame was maybe over a couple of years at most. But obviously in real life, it was over a longer
I
period of
think
time.
from Mayhem starting to the release of that album, you're looking at a period of about
85?
87, I believe, or 86, 87, and then the album was released in 94, but it was released after Euronymous' murder.
At least after the trial, weren't it?
After Varg's trial, after he was imprisoned. Because there's a really interesting little bit of information in that Euronymous' parents approached Jan Blomberg, who was the drummer of Mayhem, at the time and said, we would like Varg's bass tracks to be removed from the album. We don't want his bass on that album. Obviously, after everything that he did. Hellhammer, stage name of
Of course, we'll do that. Nope.
Yeah, he said, yeah, well, he put out an ad to have someone come in as a session bassist and re-record all of Varg's bass lines, and he never did.
Yeah.
And his words for that, his reasoning for that was he wanted the killer and the victim on the same album.
I mean, okay, putting aside the fact this actually happened and it is horrific, it's a fascinating thing to put as a piece of art. It's a fascinating thing to put out.
And I think ultimately, given how dedicated Euronymous was, certainly in the early days, to perpetuating this myth, or this image rather, he probably would have been all right with
I
it.
think he would have, yeah.
I mean, he probably didn't want to get stabbed to death in a stairwell.
Well, yeah, but who does, you know?
But I think ultimately, considering, like you said, the art it creates, it probably would have been all right with it.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. But who are we to say?
I think that's a really good point to stop this episode, really.
Yeah, there's only one thing left to say, really, and that is that I, too, was on my way to kill Euronymous. James?
I too was on my way to kill Euronymous.
As was I.
I mean, it doesn't matter that we were 5 years old and I had no idea. I didn't even know what music was at 5 years old, let alone what Norwegian black metal was. I think
True. No,
I was 10. And I don't think
Oh,
I got to
ancient.
Norway either, but still. By the way.
Norway was just somewhere you weren't allowed to go in Yorkshire. You can't. Norway, you're going over there.
All right, yeah, we'll leave it there, and yeah, we'll be back. Okay, thank you everybody for listening. If indeed there is anybody listening, we will see you again very shortly on the next Cabin Night. Thank you.